Hey everybody, this is Peter with Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to be taking a quick look at a newer release from Chaosium Inc., and that is Cults of RuneQuest Mythology. So this is one book in a 10-book series that Chaosium is planning on releasing and has already started to release that supplements their RuneQuest game. And if you've not played RuneQuest before, RuneQuest is a mythological fantasy role-playing game that takes place in the Bronze Age world of Glorantha. And in Glorantha, all of the player characters are joining cults that worship pantheons of gods, and these gods are real and they interact with the world and the people, and they are what give the players magical abilities. And so this series of books is going to be focusing, each one focusing on a different cult and the pantheon of gods that they worship. And this book, Mythology, kind of gives an overall view of what is mythology, why is mythology important, and who are the gods and why are they important to the characters. And so this gives you more of an overarching look at that idea of mythology itself. And then each of the subsequent books are all about the different cults in those pantheons. So you don't need to buy the entire series of 10 books if you don't want to. Maybe you already know the cult that your player character is participating in, it is joined up with. And so maybe you're just looking to buy that book on that cult so that you can get some more detailed information about them and some ideas for your character. Or maybe you're running the game and you want to buy the whole series, and that's great too. So they sent us a hardcover copy of the book, obviously, here, which is beautiful. It's about 140 pages long, nice hardcover, gorgeous art on the inside. They also sent us a PDF. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to jump over to the computer. We're going to pull up the PDF and we'll just skim through the PDF, taking a look at the table of contents, take a look at some of the beautiful art and some of the ideas that are talked about in the book itself. And hopefully this will help you decide if this is a book that you need for your table. And then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts on Cults of RuneQuest Mythology.
All right, everybody, so here we are with the PDF version of Cults of RuneQuest Mythology, and once again, I just want to point out this cover here, which is absolutely stunning. I love the color palette that was chosen. The illustrations are fantastic, and I believe this is probably the most beautiful book that Chaosium has ever put out, at least according to me. And so I just wanted to go ahead and state that. Props to the artists, the illustrators, the colorers, the art design, everything. It looks absolutely beautiful. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump on over to the table of contents, where we get into the layout, the structure of the book. And I will say that this book reads very much almost like an historical text. And so at times, personally, I have found it to be a little bit tough to read, to follow the flow. It's not overly narrative. There's definitely descriptions of all these things, and I think that they're all going to be really, really useful for somebody running this game, running RuneQuest, or even playing in the game, just wanting to understand the lore of the world. But this particular book definitely feels heavier when it comes to the content. So if you're just a random person picking up a book about RuneQuest, this one's probably going to feel a little tough. And I'd almost compare it to somebody who loves reading Lord of the Rings but struggles a little bit sometimes with the Silmarillion. If anybody out there is like me, and that's been a struggle that I've had in the past. But it's full of really great content, and so if RuneQuest is the world that you want to run in, then it's got some really great content. And then also, if you're just somebody who really gets into mythology or the idea of religions and mythology, you will probably find this a really fascinating read as well, because it gets into a lot of really deep ideas about what is mythology and why is it important to us, and how do we pass it down from generation to generation. So there's a lot of really big ideas taking place in this small book, and some of those ideas are a little harder to follow if that's not really your thing. But again, with the title of the book, Cults of RuneQuest and Mythology, that's maybe at least getting you a little bit of an idea about what you're getting into. So the first part of the book is the introduction, where they get into what is mythology, and then they dive into what is a cult here on Glorantha, which is really important, again, if you're playing this game, because cults are what your player characters are part of and where they're getting their religion and their magic from as well. And they get into this really interesting bit here about what is God time and the idea of all the things that happened while the gods were in charge, how they take place outside of time, and then everything else is now in time. And they talk about the world of Glorantha is only 1,600 years old. And so some really cool lore. And I really love, again, the art throughout this book. This is a beautiful calendar wheel of Glorantha, which talks about some of the holy days of the different cults around the world. Just a really cool piece of art there as well. And then they get into the idea of magic in Glorantha and what it is and what it takes for players to utilize it. This is a really cool work here of showing off the cosmology of Glorantha, from like all the different layers of the world. And so again, this is where even a piece of art like this you would normally think of as seeing in like some kind of like ancient historical text. And I just think it's really cool, but it might not be quite for everyone. Again, if you're somebody who has been running RuneQuest or playing RuneQuest, I feel like you're probably just salivating over this book, probably, which is awesome, which is great, because everybody has that game that they love, and to see it done up to this scale has to make you super happy. It makes me happy for them, seeing the beautiful art and the level of detail that Chaosium has put into this book makes me very excited for the players of RuneQuest. And so the introduction goes through all of this stuff, again, about God time and some of the calendars. They get into the specific runes of RuneQuest. Obviously, rune is in the title, and so the runes are like the basic elements of the world, and they get associated with the different gods. And then they jump into the second chapter, which is the world in general, and they get to talking about the surface world and the different regions that make up that world. And then we get through this beautiful 4-page spread of colorful art. I'm actually going to pull this up real quick as a dual page, because I want you to be able to see what it looks like. 2-page view here. Just some really, really detailed, colorful works of the gods, and it just is really fantastic. All right, so I just wanted to do that real quick. We'll jump back to a single page view again. But this after that piece of art is probably the part that really grasped my attention the most of the book, and it's getting into some of the actual myths that you can read through. They've got some myths on creation, and then they have a genealogy of one of the courts, the Celestial Court here. And then they get into quite a few different myths through the next few pages. And these I found a little bit more easy to read and to grasp. And as somebody who enjoys mythology, these were, for me, probably my favorite part of the book. It's something that I could, even if not running RuneQuest, could utilize possibly in some other games that I might find myself running at some point in time, but also just the idea of what goes into the creativity behind coming up with these mythologies and with these stories, and knowing that the team at Chaosium is just like showering this game with this level of detail and love. Again, just makes me really happy for them. So some really cool myths throughout this section. Again, a little bit of the easier portion of the book, at least for me, to read. Gosh, just another killer work of art here. I probably spent more time just looking at the art through this book than worrying over the text itself, since I don't run RuneQuest myself right now. But the art has got me interested, right? Like, it's drawing me in a way that sometimes the text wasn't drawing me in quite as much. But that is the first couple chapters there. I'm going to jump back here to the table of contents again so we can kind of quickly jump around. And then after this section on the monomyth, where we're getting all of these mythical stories, we get into understanding mythology, and again, how it works in the world and how it interacts with the peoples who populate that world. Then they give you a whole section of about 40 pages, 30, 40 pages, that are just maps of the world. And then they get into a catalog of the gods. And this is a portion that I think would also be of great benefit, not just to people who run RuneQuest, people who are just interested in creating their own pantheons of gods for their world. You could easily steal from this, have this influence you when creating your own set of deities for your game. So this is something that I think adds to the benefit of the book, because maybe you're buying the book just for this type of information that you could utilize for whatever game it is that you want to run. So this catalog of the gods, I think, is probably one of the more useful for everyone sections of this book. I love that they give you an actual family tree here for each of these different genealogies, these different deities and pantheons. And then they give you the description of each one of the gods, as well as then the rune or runes that are associated with that god specifically. So yeah, just a really, really cool bit of the book there, as you can jump real quickly through the pantheons and these catalogs of gods. And that is most of what I wanted to kind of go through real quick. They do get into a little bit more about magic in the world a little bit. It says here the universal cult format, and then also the cult distribution, which is just a really short portion kind of laying out where the different cults are along a portion of the world, as well as then some rollable charts that can be used for either, for a player character to roll the D100 for the game, to figure out maybe who it is that they're going to be worshiping, and again, depending on what area of the world they're in. So just a really cool book. It's one of those ones where I don't know that I'm going to be able to recommend it just for everybody, but if I've got a friend or I've got somebody who loves reading mythology or just ruminating on the idea of mythology and religions, somebody who runs fantasy role-playing games and is constantly wondering, how do I create a pantheon of gods? Showing them the example from this book, I think, would be a really great creativity starter for them. So those are some of the people that I immediately think of, who is this book for? One, it's for the people who play RuneQuest or run RuneQuest, but also for the people out there who just love the idea of mythology and religion, and people who are looking to create maybe their own worlds and pantheons of gods. Seeing a book like this, knowing that this type of level of detail is possible, I think would be, it's the juice. It's the thing that gets you going, right? And so, and it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt that this book is beautiful to look at. So I know that's a really quick overview of this book itself. If I was here getting into details, we'd be here for hours and hours. But as a general overview, I think, one, the book is gorgeous. I think it's utilitarian. I think it can be greatly utilized by people who play RuneQuest as well as others who are just playing other fantasy role-playing games. And then it's very pretty. I can't say it often enough. So let's go ahead and come back away from the PDF now. I'll give you my final thoughts on Cults of RuneQuest Mythology.
All right, everybody. So we have taken a quick look at Cults of RuneQuest Mythology by Chaosium. And final thoughts. This book is, one, incredibly beautiful, full of fantastic art and ideas, just the ideas about mythology and how they can interact with the world and what they mean to peoples who learn them and tell those stories again and again. Just some really cool ideas and concepts in this book. And that's actually something that I like about this one. I've not been able to take a look at the individual Cults of RuneQuest books yet about the different cults and their pantheons. But seeing this one, I think that this book is, one, going to be interesting to somebody who's running RuneQuest, but two, could possibly be of interest to anyone running any role-playing game that involves the idea of gods and pantheons of gods and mythology, because there's a lot of really great concepts in here for you to even utilize in your games. Just because the book says RuneQuest doesn't mean that it's limited to only being useful for that game. And the other books about the individual cults, my guess is, might be more specific to the world of RuneQuest, and probably maybe just a little bit more work to adapt to whatever world you're running, if you're running a fantasy world. But this one here, I think, would probably be very easy to adapt to whatever generic world you may be running your fantasy game in already. And so maybe you're not a RuneQuest person and you just watched this video just to kind of see what it was about. My guess is you might have thought as you were watching, I could use that. I could use that in my game. And if that's the case, that's great. And you can head over to chaosium.com to pick up a copy now, or head over to your friendly local game store and see if they have it there, or you can order it through them as well. But I think Chaosium has done a really great job with this book. I'll be interested in seeing some of the individual books on the different cults and pantheons to see what they look like, to see if we could also adapt those for other games as well, or if they'll be more specific to just the world of Glorantha. But yeah, I was super grateful for Chaosium sending me over a copy of this book. Thank you so much for that. I hope this video has helped you decide if this is a book that would be useful for you and your players at your table. And again, if you want to pick up a copy, you can head over to chaosium.com. You could also head over to tabletopgamingguild.com to learn a little bit more about us. And if you like the video, go ahead and give it a like, maybe subscribe to the channel. Continue checking out all of the other great reviews that we're putting out on a daily basis. And until we talk again, everybody, keep on playing games.